So if you are looking for a new camera and you are thinking about the Sony ZV-E1, today I'm here to talk about the camera that I'm using right here, and that's the Sony ZV-E1. Today in a different format, in a different place, because I want to test this camera with you, and I'm gonna tell you if this camera is worth it or not, and I'm gonna give you the reason why I bought this camera. So I bought this camera because I needed a full frame camera with low light capability that needed to check some features that I needed. So one is the full frame with the low light capability, and this camera is full frame, is a 4K camera full frame, and it has a very good low light capability because this camera uses the same sensor as the Sony A7S III and the FX3, and those cameras have an excellent low light capability, and this one too. This is one of the reasons that I decided to go with this camera. Another thing that the camera should have is an excellent autofocus, and of course this camera has a fantastic autofocus. It has the new AI chip that was introduced with the A7R5, and this camera can do an excellent autofocus. This camera can focus on everything from birds, planes, insects, people, I don't know, everything. So this camera has an amazing autofocus, even with third-party lens. I'm using now Tanroom 17 to 28 f2.8. Since I bought this lens, I've been using it in this camera a lot, and I never had any issues with the autofocus. So this camera has an amazing autofocus. I tested with this lens, I tested with the 16 to 35 f4 from Sony, the Zeiss version. I tested with the 50mm f1.8. I tested with a lot of lenses, a full frame lens, and they all work perfectly. So the autofocus is amazing, and that's another thing that the camera should have. And it should also have a good stabilization, and this camera has an amazing image stabilization. So it has IPS internal image stabilization, and it also has that adapted, I don't know what's called, so it has a digital stabilization that works like a gimbal. So that dynamic steady shot, active dynamic steady shot, something like that, that it's amazing. So you can walk with this camera and talk to the camera, you can vlog, and the camera will always get your image steady. So let's test that. I'm gonna remove this from here and I'm gonna test this. So let me adjust a little bit here of the brightness of the camera. Let's go here, it's very bright, so I'm walking with the camera, and now it's gonna be a little bit darker. So let's go, and I don't know if you can notice it's working perfectly, it's steady. Now let's come here to the studio, and I'm gonna be here a little more in the studio. And let me put the camera here. And now here we are in the studio, and I can tell you that the stabilization of the camera is very, very, very good. I'm super happy with that. And it also has an excellent audio. An internal microphone of the camera is amazing. It works perfectly. It can detect the audio from front, sides, back. You can adjust from where you want to hear it, or can put it in auto, and it will detect your voice and follow your voice. So almost everything on this camera is very good. Even the price is good, because the price of the camera is almost half of the Sony FX3. So it's a big difference, and it has almost the same features, and the ones that are missing, it's the Cine EI. It's the only thing I think that is missing on this, and the internal fan and all of that. But it has more features because this one has that new AI chip that the FX3 doesn't have, and that allows a lot of extras that the FX3 and the A7S III don't have. Of course, not everything on this camera is great. It has some minor issues that for many people that are issues, but for me, I don't think so, because one of them that the people talk is the build quality of the camera is not that great, and the LCD is not that great. I don't find that a problem, because for me the build quality is more than enough, and the LCD is only for seeing if I'm in frame, and it's working perfectly, so I don't have that problem. People are talking also about the only one card slot. Of course, if you are doing paid jobs, if you are a wedding, a cinematographer, or if you do interviews or something like that, only one SD card is not that great, because you should always have dual cards for backup. But for me, I don't see that as a problem, because I'm a content creator. If I have any problems with the card, I will replace, put another one, and reshoot. That's not that important to me. Another thing that people are talking about is it doesn't have the same custom buttons as the FX3 and the A7S III and other cameras. Of course, it's cheaper and it has a better touchscreen than all the other cameras. And the menus on this camera work perfectly. The touchscreen is amazing. You have everything on your touchscreen. And since nowadays we are used to work with our smartphone, and you can do everything easily just by touching the screen. So you don't need all those custom buttons. You can even start recording on your screen. So for me, it's not that a problem. And another problem that everyone is talking about is the overheating of the camera. So the camera overheats. I managed to overheat the camera one time. I was testing at the sun outside with 120 FPS. The camera overheat around 40 minutes, and it was 30 or 32 degrees outside Celsius, and the camera overheats. But I tested with 24 frames. It's the regular frame rate that I use, and the camera doesn't overheat that much. And if the camera overheats, if you go to the desert or if you go to a place like that and you need 120 frames or 60 frames per second and for a long time, you can buy an external fan, like the one that I have in the camera right now. Is turned off because I don't need. If you want to check that fan, I will leave a link over here and in the description for you to check it out. The fan works great, and that will resolve your problems of overheating. But for me, those problems aren't there because I'm using at 24 frames per second and I don't have that problem. So in conclusion, my opinion is that this camera is an amazing camera.
Yes.
Is everything that I need for a camera. And if you are looking for a camera, and if you are a content creator and you will need a small camera, light camera with all these features, and if you vlog or if you do travel videos, all the things, this camera is amazing. And you can save a lot of money with this camera and buy an excellent glass. I hope this information was helpful, and I hope this information will help you to decide if you need the camera or not. And if that's the case, don't forget, hit that like button, that helps a lot. Subscribe if you're not subscribed to see more content like this one, and hit that notification bell to be notified next time I launch a video. Until then, bye!